Okay, I'll call this resumption of this special council meeting to order, and we have one item to deal with, well, two items. The zone change application and then bylaws, and it's the zone change application for 42 West Acres Crescent, which we deferred to this date. And we have 6 delegations registered at this point in time. I want to remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation. If you've been a delegation in the past, I also want to remind you that your comments this evening should be limited to any new information that you weren't able to present at previous meetings. And our first delegation is Ms. Jen Dahl. And apologies for us not being in the normal seats, but we're having some technical difficulties from the normal chair's chair. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Van Brandevik, councillors, staff, and community members, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again this evening. Since the last council meeting on March 25th, there was a small meeting with staff, community representatives, and developers on April 4th, and a new report reviewing Highland Road access. While we appreciate that they reached out for a meeting and some positive discussion did come out of that meeting, we were disappointed that staff were not open to discussing the Highland Road access and developers were not open to discussing the density, which are still two of our main concerns. The main issue with Highland Road seems to be that the region thinks that an entrance on Highland Road would not be safe, even though there has been a functioning entrance there since that house was there without issue. I believe, as an example, that there was a similar entranceway issue for a building at the corner of Fairway Road, which is also a regional road, and Wilson Ave. This is an extremely busy intersection with many issues, but that driveway was still able to go into that regional road with a similar distance from the stoplight. Beyond that, my last area of concern since the meeting that we had was that I would like to confirm that we will be able to be a part of the site plan process, as was mentioned in our small meeting with our community reps. That's one thing where we did meet with them and discuss things, but it wasn't mentioned in the report that we would actually be involved in this process going forward. I would also like to confirm that the same planners will stay on through the site plan review process, as they are aware of everything that has taken place so far. So I think it would be in our community's best interest and everyone's best interest to have the same developers moving forward. I would hope that I can continue and we all can continue to work together on these main issues. And that's all I have for today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have some questions for you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for coming in and pointing out a few things that are still outstanding. Mm-hmm. You raised the issue of the driveway again. When you met with a small group, met with the planning staff and the developer, the reason that they're still giving is that the region is saying it's an unsafe entrance. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's not necessarily to do with the grading.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Right. The other question you were asking about and confirmation was that as a community representative that you can participate in the site plan review committee. I would just want to put it out there because I want to have staff answer that question once you're done and other people are done their delegations.
That would be great. Thank
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next, Councillor Yanetsky.
You pointed out two of the issues are access to Highland Road and density, and I know the access to Highland Road has been addressed, and we know the scenario with the region's position. Mm-hmm. With the density, 27 units, I gather you want it reduced. Reduced to what?
This has come up time and time again, and I don't know that we necessarily have a number. I know from speaking with people in our neighborhood, because we have our own small committee that's been working on this throughout, that some people would definitely like to see a single dwelling home still there, like they don't want the zone change at all. Others would be happy if it was overall 2 stories instead of 3 stories. So it really depends. It's just the height is part of the issue, as well as the amount of traffic.
Amount of traffic that would be generated from that particular development.
Yes.
And you know the height limit is the same way through the whole subdivision there.
Pardon?
The height limit is the same throughout the whole subdivision based on zoning. Nothing's changed. I know you don't like it because it's the grade, but that's the story.
Yeah, it would be a huge difference from the rest of the street, and it wouldn't be compatible with what's currently there. We do have some two-story homes, but it's mostly back splits and smaller houses. And
Okay.
especially the houses that directly surround that property, it would be towering over them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovich. Thanks, Jen, for coming in, and maybe just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on what that meeting was regarding with some of the residents and dealing with the westerly access on Highland Road. It wasn't primarily on the region saying no. Part of it is that there is the landowners would need to get permission from the neighboring property to be able to proceed forward. So I think that needs to be clarified first before. So I mean, granted, the region as well doesn't want to approve it, but there's also a lot more other complications to it than just that.
I think that, if I'm able to comment on that, I think that does have to do with the latest drawing that they came up with, and it seems somewhat extreme. I think some people who are speaking after me might touch on that a bit further, but there might still be other options available for Highland Road that wouldn't encroach onto other people's properties.
Okay, I don't know about those other designs or whatever you have in mind, but I just wanted to update you on what I was at that meeting with some of the residents and with staff and as well. I also wanted to touch upon.
Do we have questions?
I want to touch upon what Councillor Yaneski had asked with regards to the amount of units you're actually looking at. So you gave a broad range.
Yeah.
And we know a single unit there is not going to be in the best interest of the current landowners.
Yes.
So is there something there that you have a realistic number?
I personally would like to see something, like I mentioned at the last meeting, where it's across the road from Highland, across the road from Max there. So I'm not sure if it's exactly similar, but it's a fairly decent-sized property, like 42 West Acres, but it's all single-story bungalows attached. So you still have much more than a single home there, but it's a single level and all attached. From speaking with the neighbors, though, some would still be much happier with at least 2 stories instead of the 3 stories that they're proposing.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, next is Councillor Marsh.
Hello, thank you for coming in again, and I apologize for not hearing all of your presentation. So I want to ask you, so regarding the 2-story and 3-story, have you read the addendum report? Yeah.
Yes, I have.
So my understanding of it is that, and is that the two, it would be 2 stories facing West Acres and 3 stories facing Highland, which is a lower pitch, and so it wouldn't be as high as 3 stories facing your neighbors. Do you understand that to be the case? I'm asking you if your understanding of this is the same as mine.
Yes, from what I understand, I'm not a planner at all or engineer. It does look like there will be 2 stories facing West Acres, but it will be brought up to the highest point on West Acres, and then facing Highland, there will be 3 stories shown. So you'll see the full 3 stories from Highland, but from West Acres, we'll still see 2 stories. And from the drawing, to me, it looks more like 2.5 stories, because you do see the stairs going up to that 2nd story, and I believe part of the 1st story still, as far as I understand it. And it also said, I believe, somewhere that it was 25 feet that we'll see from West Acres. And I believe 2 stories is 20 feet. So that's already still quite substantial, especially when you look at the houses that are right next to it. They're single-story houses.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions. Thanks so much for coming in, Ms. Dole.
Thank you.
Next up is Sharon Harding. Welcome, Ms. Harding.
Welcome. I just want to speak to you as community members. I've been a resident of West Acres Crescent since 1987. I've owned my home there. And we met I was one of the delegates or representatives from the community that met with Rick and Carlos, the developers, as well as Della and Andrew and the fire chief and Bill. We did have good discussion, which was something that was missing from all of what we've had. But at the end of the day, we still have a neighborhood that we are very concerned of. We are concerned about the traffic that's going to be flowing in and out those streets. We're concerned about the traffic on Highland. We're concerned about the traffic on West Heights as well as on West Acres. To the density, if we have 27 units, taking off a row of that reduces it down. I want you to think about your own neighborhood and think of, would you want this going on your crescent? You've been a long-time resident in your neighborhood. Would you seriously consider and vote to have this appear in your neighborhood? That's all I have to say today. I just really want you to consider that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harding. I have a question for you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for being part of that community group. I think it's important that at least you had that discussion after our last committee meeting. One of the things you've talked about was the traffic concerns and the speeding of people approaching the driveway and coming out of the driveway and onto your street. Was there any discussion about the narrowing of the driveway, or what they call shark teeth, or some kind of way of slowing the traffic as it came into the driveway or out onto the street?
Yes, there was, and I believe that is in the report as well, where they speak to that, doing some traffic calming things. You can calm the traffic, but you can't stop the numbers, the volume.
You can't stop the volume.
You can calm the traffic, but you can't stop the volume.
No, you're correct. Okay, right. That's, I think, the only issue I wanted to bring up based on what you presented tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, through you, Mayor Urbanovic, and just want to thank you for coming in again. And I know how passionate you are for your neighborhood and everything else, and I definitely do appreciate that. But I also want to be able to set the realistic expectations from the neighborhood, and from the way some of the concerns were raised across, it's basically, there is going to be some kind of form of development as this council is going to look at it, in the sense. That's how they're going to look at it, because if we don't proceed further, there would be an OMB hearing, and then the city would be sued, basically, in a sense. So, and it would be going counter to what their staff have recommended, and further, we also have the region as well, who've also approved that. So we'd be basically going against two planning staff, and the city would have to basically go get their own separate legal representation against their own staff. And so basically, is when you ask that question about whether this would be in our own development, well, from this perspective, it is different, because we're looking at it as a grand scheme of things. We're not looking at it as a neighborhood per se, in a microcosm. So that's the perspective I want to give you.
Do you have a question on that? Or? Okay. 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 Thank you. Those are all the questions. Thank you. Next delegation is Deb Tambling. Welcome, Ms. Tambling.
Thank you. Good evening. I just had a few brief comments and a question. I was the other member who attended the meeting with the developers and some representatives from this group. So, as we've heard, although the two key concerns for our neighborhood group was off the table, we did have a productive conversation despite that. We did bring forward some of the traffic calming concerns and had a good conversation around that, so we felt good about that. Fence height was another item that the developers agreed to look at. One request we had was to look at some more mature trees in planting, so that we didn't have a lot of small growth initially and we were waiting for a number of years, but understand from reading the report that that's not something that is recommended. So thinking that's off the table from that perspective. We did have a commitment that I wanted to share that the developer as well as Bill did commit to share with us some of those site plan details, so we understand we're not part of the process, but to see what's coming out of these discussions and the discussions we've had so that we have some assurance that those items we've talked about and have been agreed to are showing up in that plan. The one question I did have was that as we were talking about the height of the buildings in that meeting, we had asked if options could be explored, so understanding that the buildings are 3 stories, that there's 2 stories showing from the West Acres side. We had asked for whether there were any other options that they could look at elevation there. So again, considering those homes in the immediate area being bungalows or back splits, that elevation on the property itself, if that could be something that could be looked at for other alternatives so that maybe it would reduce the height in comparison to those buildings. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, we have one question for you, Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for bringing up a couple of other issues. As I'm looking at this one picture, the parking as I see it on the addendum is mainly going to be in the front of the West Acres property. Mm-hmm. It will be fronting on that. Did you speak about the issues of cars idling, the snow, where the snow removal is going to be pushed, and how that's going to look when you're driving down West Acres? Did you talk about any of that?
We didn't talk specifically about snow removal. We did talk about the concerns of water in the area, so whether that's from snow accumulation or runoff, but there are quite a number of issues in the neighborhood today. So we were told that in the parking lot it's to be built almost like a bit of a V with drainage along that, and that would take care of any runoff.
Okay. You reiterated again about the height of, as did Sharon. My understanding from speaking with Mr. Martins is that it's a 2-story frontage, set back quite significantly. So do you feel that with the parking lot as a buffer, that it will reduce the impact, or is it still too high?
I think it helps for those homes that are there, but there are homes along either side as well. So I think we felt good about what the plan is shaping up to be compared to what it was. But if there are other options to be looking at the depth that the buildings are placed at, I think that's just an additional benefit, not giving up the height that they currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovich, and again, I want to thank Deb for coming in and for her participation in that meeting again last week. It's really appreciative. I want to ask the question too, if because you seem concerned about the height and everything else. With regards to if you were to face it from the meeting, if we were to face the property from the sidewalk on West Acres, it wouldn't actually look like 2 stories. It would actually look maybe like 1.5 stories based on the grading. That was what we had discussed at the meeting, was it not?
I understood that they were to be 25 feet, and that from West Acres, West Acres would be 3 feet higher than the building, so 22 feet.
Okay. Well, I heard it the other way, but I'm going to ask that for clarification. Sure. So that's what I wanted to hear. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, those are all the questions we had. Thank you very much, Ms. Tambling.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Diane Levasseur. Welcome, Ms. Levasseur.
The grading on the east end of the property is so much lower than on the west side of the property, and my concern is why the entrance wasn't designed to come off the lower level. I did see some sketches where they brought the land up from West Acres and then down again, giving it a larger grade to the street. but I'm thinking if it was left the level it is now, it wouldn't be more than your 8% going onto the road. I'm happy with the issues that got resolved on April the 4th. My concerns being the small bungalow that's on the next to the property was the drainage onto my property, the lighting and the fence, and they've explained what they could do to prevent the water from flowing onto my property, because there is an area there where water does lay, and the ground water in that area is very high. If the exit must be off West Acres, I'm still upset with the number of units, which increase the traffic onto West Acres to be double of what it is now. This morning there was 10 cars waiting to exit West Heights to Highland Road turning west. Right now to west, which is turning the left. Now at 8 o'clock, and there is a steady stream of cars on West Heights exiting onto Highland Road. With the additional parking of 47 cars, some of these would also be leaving at approximately the same time. So I would need to turn off West Acres onto Blackwell in order to get into that line of traffic, and I think that is quite a bit of extra traffic for the street. The city planning policy states specifically compatible with the neighborhood. I don't see how a three-story unit or that many units is compatible. I'm thinking that maybe if they changed it to 3-bedroom units instead of 2-bedroom, it would cut down the number of families. Even across the road, from Highland, across the road, there are only two stories. So you're talking one complete story higher than what's on the other side of Highland Road. I'm thinking that the parking lot there's just too many cars coming out on that side. The density's too high.
Okay, thank you very much. And there don't appear to be any questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming in this evening, Ms. Levasseur. Our next delegation is Brenda Campbell. Welcome, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. I have the property on the west side of it, so my interest is in regards to the comments on the fencing. Thank you for the consideration for increasing the height of the fence, and my request is to reaffirm that I could have something in writing that would be on the table and would go through for me for that privacy and noise buffer for that side of that property, being the west side, full privacy fencing and the higher, going to the 8 feet.
Okay, maybe we can get some clarification from staff for you, but would that be one of the terms that would be in the agreement? I think they're consulting.
It was item number 6 on the community comment, saying that it was proposed. What I'm asking for is something in writing so that I can ensure that that would be followed through in respect to and all fairness to me.
Sure, I understand. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, we do have a site plan application in hand that we could put the fence notation as 2.4 meters, which is 8 feet, rather than 1.8 meters for 6 feet. That is a possibility. We could just put a label right on the site plan that shows the westerly fence being that high.
Yeah, I just wanted something in writing to rest assured that that was going to follow through, that once developing began, that the discussion would conveniently be forgotten or dismissed, or however you want to put it, right? You want to make sure that we're following through if we're,
Sure. No, and I think you heard that it is possible to do that as part of the site plan process. Councillor Ioannidis?
And you can communicate with me with that as well, because I'll follow up with that as in addition, because I think
for positive reinforcement.
Yes,
so
of course it'll be positive reinforcement. But I just want to make one addition to what you're suggesting, is because I don't want to limit your options, because you may find an 8-foot fence unbearable without knowing until it's built. So I want that to be in there, at least maybe if there's a way to have a check and balance for you to see whether or not you want an 8-foot fence or a 6-foot fence kind of thing, because it could change your whole perspective once everything is built. So I want to make sure that you're satisfied on that. And I'm not sure if that can be put in there if possible.
Through the mayor, we can put a notation on the site plan. That would be, the site plan itself would be become part of a document that's registered on the title of the property and would be carried forward with any subsequent owners. So it is a legitimate way to ensure that it is an 8-foot high fence.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the delegation, because the map that we have here on 2-9 is actually, it shows the driveway coming off of Highland. So that's not the plan as we are anticipating it to look like. Is that correct, Mr. Pinnell? Okay. I apologize. Maybe we should have had what is proposed up on the screen so that we can actually be talking about the same thing, because I think we've been talking about some questions that have been asked not related to this specific one. Sorry, your name just went right out of my head. I apologize.
Brenda.
Brenda, my understanding is that you are the closest house to the buildings that will be sitting.
Correct.
Right. And the concern that I think you've raised before and that I would be concerned about is the view from the bedrooms into your backyard.
That's correct.
Okay. Just going to wait until Mr. Pinnell puts up the plan there so that we can reference that. Oops.
So that's also where the concern collaborates with the height.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So with your property being the closest to the one that's marked units 1 to 12, you're saying that an 8-foot fence you are confident should give you enough, or a sense of privacy. Maybe not, might not give you enough privacy, but it will give you a sense of privacy.
Yes.
Okay. There were an issue of some mature trees on your property as well. Has that been addressed in all of these conversations?
I don't believe so. I believe the only item that came to light was if there was consideration of a driveway access off Highland coming up the west side, where it would need to encroach upon my property, which would directly affect those trees needing a retaining wall and so forth.
Okay. But since that's not happening, they will be able to preserve those mature trees. Have you been told that or not?
I have not been told that.
Okay. Looking to staff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding in speaking with the urban designer that's been assigned to this file that it is possible to retain those 2 existing trees on the westerly property line using the plan that you see before you on the screen.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right. Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions we have. Thank you for coming in. And our last delegation this evening is Mr. Rick Martins. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to put a face to the project, and I think maybe that's where we started off on the wrong foot when we started with this. I want to thank staff, I want to thank council, but most importantly, I want to thank the residents for their input. I know that we're not always going to agree on every point. However, I think we've discussed this. There's 27 units. Unfortunately, we've reduced it already from what our original count was to try to meet with expectations. 1/3 of the units are going to be visitable, which I'm very proud of. 2/3 of the units will be 2 bedrooms. 1/3 of the units will be 3 bedrooms. We would have put the access off of Highland if it was at all feasible. And when I say feasible, I don't mean money. I mean in the sense of safety, security, functionality, It wasn't. So unfortunately, we've done all the research we could. We've put a lot of time and effort trying to solve the riddle. Unfortunately, it's a riddle that can't be solved. So today I just ask that we take the next step forward and move forward. I will give my commitment to the residents here behind me that we're here to work with them. Our business is based on referral, and I would love nothing better than to have them referring our units and really making this an inclusive community. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, we have a couple questions for you. First of all, Councillor Ioannidis.
Through you, Mayor Urbanovic, thanks, Mr. Martins, for coming in. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. If today we, as a committee, or no, this is special council, so as a council, was to approve a reduced amount of units, what would your reaction be towards that?
I would unfortunately have to take the decision to the OMB because from a feasibility standpoint, each unit that we lose here is actually a $50,000 hit to the project. And we're, at best, this unit, what we're doing here is to change the conversation. We're reintroducing ourselves to the community. But again, we're in business not to be a non-for-profit. We're in business to profit, and we would not be profitable if we were to lose any units here.
Okay. From your initial, I guess, designs and everything else prior to coming to staff and everything else, what was your initial plans? Because I want to make sure that there's a highlight of difference in what you first came and what it is today.
Sure. So initially, when we looked at this project 4 years ago, we were looking at about 40 stacked townhouses. But then there was we had to acquire some land from the region. There was some land swapping. So the process took quite a bit of time. So we took it from the original 40 units down to the 27 because we heard about a year ago at the meeting that there was concern about heights. There was concern about these not fitting in within the community. Originally, we had designed a more modern looking building. So we went back to the drawing board and we tried to bring it as close as to what's there to make it inclusive. Again, at the end of the day, we're hoping that people that are living in the community will actually purchase some of these units themselves. Some of these, like I said, from a visibility, I think you had a presentation on it, but just in case some of the residents don't understand what that means, it means no step entrance. It means wider doorways. It means one washroom that's wheelchair accessible in the home. We're actually hopefully going to be able to make them completely barrier free, but we're not there yet. There's still a lot of design that has to happen. So the evolution of this product from where we were to where we are today is drastically changed. I'd say 180.
Okay. And my last question is regarding some of the residents' concerns about being involved in the process of site plan and everything else. I know they don't effectively need to be there from your perspective, but can you personally guarantee or at least publicly state that you would be willing to support some of the initiatives that they're concerned or at least willing to work with them and let them know?
100%. They were all, Sharon and Deb were given my business cards and I asked them to distribute them accordingly. We will be sharing everything that we're doing. We will be sharing both with you, Bill, as well as with the group that they have here. Again, at the end of the day, your best neighbor is the one that you have forever. And we're not looking to come in here, do 27 units and disappear off the face of the earth. We've built over 10,000 units in our prior business venture in the community here. And I'm hoping to build another 10,000 going forward. Not all here at West Acres. I don't want to. Let me make sure I make that clear. But again, it's about bringing choice, affordability, about and making our communities better. Change is difficult for all of us, and sometimes I can speak from experience. Any of the areas that we've ever built in and we've infilled, the residents around have always benefited from increased property values in the future because the communities become better for it.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for the conversation that we had on the phone the other day. I appreciate that a lot. I'm just looking at this map, and now that I've been refreshed at what the site is going to look like, one of the concerns I think I would have if I was living there would be the balconies. And unfortunately, I can't see what is on the top, very top of this picture. There's a little square jutting out on units 1 to 12. What is that? Yeah. No, thank you, Andrew. That's better. So now it's on the left of that. And what is that little square jutting out on the units 1 to 12? No, all the way
to the left of you.
I can speak to it. I think I know. Yeah. That's an equipment room that's designed for these buildings. Oh. We're actually looking at our designs right now, but again, this is very preliminary, and yes. Until we have the site plans and we have things firmed up, we're looking at eliminating both. So from units 1 to 12, you see the one on the far left. Mm-hmm. Units 13 to 27 on the far right. Those buildings there would be where the water meters, hydro, those would have sort of been housed. We're looking to move those so that they're actually part of the facade, and you're not having that projection there, because again, it gives you more usable space for the residents to use afterwards.
Okay, and that's what I was hoping. It wasn't a balcony, but because I couldn't read it, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't. The balconies, I guess, on the units 13 to 27. Will they be looking into the backyard of the person who lives on the bottom of that page?
So to the immediate right?
Yes.
They may see the back corner of the backyard. Again, because of how they're set back, they may see a little bit of the back corner of the backyard, but nothing significant in the sense that it'd be very similar to other neighbors around with their visibility.
Okay. And the visitable housing, you're saying, are going to be in the units 1 to 12 or the units 1 to 13, or just spread out?
Actually, the visible units are the lower level. So the level that actually faces Highland, because of the topography of the site, we were able to ramp everything properly and get them so that they can get from the parking lot, which is a much higher level, down to the lower units. So along the bottom, so I guess what we call garden level, those are the ones that are going to be. So it'll be units 1 through to 9, I think is how they're numbered.
Okay. And the ones that are with the balcony on that same block facing West Acres, those will be entrances for people going into their units, right?
That's correct. So the entrances for the 2-story units all come from West Acres.
Okay. All right. So I know you've heard what everybody has said and all the concerns that they have, and I think it is very important that the residents that are sitting here today have heard your promise and commitment to them. So I think that's sort of my final comment to you. They have my number and I have yours, so to speak, and I think that we should be all working together. And I'm really appreciative that you did sit down with the residents and the councillor and the staff. So I think that does speak very well for you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with them in the future as well.
Okay, next up is Councillor Kelly Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I just have one question, and it was something that Brenda brought up She was asking for something in writing to commit that the fence would be at least 8 feet high. If you say yes here, it ends up in writing in the minutes, therefore it's in writing for her. So I just wanted to do that for her, get that in writing. So it sounds like you're amenable to the fence height that she's looking for, but as Councillor Ioannidis said, work through the process in case at the end of the day 7 feet might be right or 6 feet might be right.
Yeah, and I think that what's most important is that each solution will be catered to the right solution. Because again, to say, yeah, can I build an 8-foot fence? Yeah, it's quite simple and easy to do. Is it what you really are intending at the end of it, especially when it's being a walkout? It might not be, and that's where we will be sitting down with Brenda. We will be sitting down with any of the people that have concerns and dealing with them to hopefully a resolution that they don't feel that they have to come back to either Bill or the city or anything else.
Right, and I hear you, but if at the end of the day she says she wants 8 foot, you're committed to build 8 foot. But if you come to an agreement on 7, 6, whatever.
As long as again we're allowed to build it. So
Yeah.
from a city perspective,
right,
you don't come back to me and say, no, Rick, I don't care that you agree to 8 feet. You can't build it. I'm not worried about
Perfect.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions we have. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'll go to Councillor Singh to bring forward the recommendation.
Thank you, and the item has been moved by myself and is seconded by Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Okay, we'll open the floor. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you very much. These are for comments now?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, you have questions? Is there questions of, sorry, there's questions of staff first. Councillor Yanetsky,
No, I don't have questions of staff, just comments.
Do you have, okay, Councillor Ioannidis?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Some of the questions I want to ask was raised by some of the delegations, and it's pertaining to you, Andrew, as maintaining on the file. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, specifically whether or not that is even possible, or whether, or you can elaborate what the correspondence is with someone else that's dealing with it between the two of you or staff?
I'm not clear on what exactly you're asking, Councillor Ioannidis.
One of the residents was questions asked whether or not Andrew be involved in the process when it comes to the site plan, because he understands the residents' concerns and everything else.
Okay.
That's where I want to clarification.
Okay,
on
Mr.
that.
Pinnell?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I will be the staff member assigned to the site plan and any other development applications for this property.
Okay, that's good. My other question too is, again, just to follow up with the grading, in particular with the view from the sidewalk. And from my understanding from the meeting that we had last week, if we were to be standing at the sidewalk on West Acres and looking at the proposed development, it'd look like a story and a half because of the way of the grading.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that the building at West Acres elevation would be 2 stories, not 1.5.
I understand it's 2 stories, but because of the way, from my understanding, with the way the grading is, because it's to be vistable, if we were to standing at the sidewalk, it would look like really 1.5. Unless you're in the parking lot, it would look like 2. That's my understanding.
Through Mr. Mayor, there is a slight dip in the grading. I'm not sure exactly how much it is. We'd have to actually plot it out, but there is a slight dip, so it may look a little bit less than 2 stories, but probably not too much.
Okay. And with the current zoning right now, the height is basically would be 10 meters regardless of whether the zone change or not, correct?
10.5 meters is the maximum height.
Okay, I think that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded. Councillor Yanetsky, if you want to buzz in again so you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've heard the questions that have been asked by on the Horseshoe. We happen to have the comments provided by the residents who live in the area, and it's clear that there are still basically 2 issues, although there are some other issues dealing with fencing and height and shrubbery as well that could be done at the site plan issue. But the two issues that basically come down to is access to Highland Road versus West Heights, and as well as the density. And I remember asking a question on as to density issues as well. I should point out, I've got a planning background, so you may know, so letting you know that I have experiences in this particular field. And I just want to let you know that access to Highland Road, and having dealt with the region for many, many years, is a very difficult thing, because if you do provide it here, the region will probably object and take it to the board themselves, because it's always been their policy not to provide any access to Highland Road. And that becomes a given, and even though you've had negotiations with the different staff people, they're not going to budge on that at all. And that's not a decision that we can make here as council, because it's a regional decision. And they are going to fight that, because I just know how they operate there. So, unfortunately, the access will have to come to West Heights Crescent. However, I'm going to provide a solution here to you to reduce the traffic and try to make this maybe a better scenario. The site plan that you have before you, which is the one on the screen, has 2 blocks of buildings, 1 to 12 and 13 to 27. And they're going to be basically givens, and you got your whole parking lot in front. I'm going to make an amendment to the zone change approval application, Mr. Mayor, and have the density reduced from 27 units to 18 units. So basically it will be, instead of 3 units per building, it will be 2 units per building. So that reduces the density, and that will also reduce the parking and the volume of traffic. It still will be more than what you have now, considerably more, but it won't be as much as what's being proposed. What you were looking back initially was a development, when the developer said he had a whole bunch of units to put in. It's like taking 15 pounds of sugar and putting it into a 5-pound bag. It just ain't going to fit. But what we have here is a developer that could fit, in terms of a scenario of putting 5 pounds of sugar into a 5-pound bag, because it would be feasible to do that. I've got planning experience of working in the private field as well, and I know how the operation in terms of developers and builders work, in terms of trying to buy property, maximize the profit, and try to make the best deal, and work to get the best profit, as well as try to get the best development for the area. There's lots of flexibility in terms of doing things correctly and still making a dollar and still doing the right type of development. So, but the other problem you may have to think about is that my recommendation of reduced density could result in the developer taking this to the Ontario Municipal Board, and you're going to have to fight it against the developer. That's a thing that you have to remember. However, that decision in terms of whether you will have to do that will be determined by council, in terms of whether the rest of my colleagues here support the reduced density from 27 units to 18 units. And if they don't support it, then we're back to 27 and you don't have to go to the board, unless you yourselves want to take the whole application to the board, and that's your decision. So, having laid that out, my recommendation is for the amendment to the application in the same design that you have here, but just reduce the number of units from 18 to 27. You can put 2 units in each particular building sort of there, and still leave your 9 blocks of houses there. And then the parking would be reduced, and you have more landscaping, still to meet the zoning bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Yanetsky, I'll ask that you provide that amendment in writing, first of all, so I can take it. And then the other point of clarification, just to your comments, is that if council were to accept your amendment and the developer took it to the OMB, it would be both, the neighborhood would be defending, both the neighborhood and council, who would have to get their own lawyer, would be defending it against city staff and the developer. So I think it's important that that point be made clear as well. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for clarifying that, especially coming from Councillor Janeski, who referenced his earlier comments or later comments by advising that he has past planning experience. It is not the neighborhood that will fight this. The neighborhood can choose to be a participant to the appeal to the OMB. It will be the city that has to fight this decision if this amendment is supported, which means ultimately, yes, it is the citizens, but not just the citizens of West Acres, but the citizens of Kitchener that will have to incur those legal fees and the extended costs that are related to the OMB appeal by the developer if the amendment were to proceed. I remember a scenario where in most of us around this chamber or the council shoe that were new members of council dealt with a very similar planning proposal for a zone change for greater density in a single residential home. And I think the developer had proposed around, 28 units. And then we played around with number game where I think 4 or 5 members put up their hand, 18, 15, 16, felt like an auction. In the end, the developer took the city, appealed to the OMB, and after exhaustive cost and time, I think the neighborhood didn't get what they want, and ultimately the taxpayers paid the price for it too. What the proposal is on the table for a zone change has been supported by staff. That's clear. There's no question to it. Staff have gone through looking at our official plan document, which the community goes through extensive process and is ratified by the region and outlines a certain density that is allowed based on low density, which this would be able to conform to that. There would be very limited argument, in my opinion, that we could make if we don't support this proposal. Today, I'm comforted by the delegations because I didn't hear everyone come forward saying, no way, no how, not in my backyard. Although some are very resistant, while others came forward acknowledging the effort that the developer has taken, involvement with the City of Kitchener planning staff and the ward councillor in finding compromises. And there seems to be additional compromises that are now on the table that were not beforehand. I think we're in a far better place. I take confidence in from the comments from the developer in saying that he ensures that this type of development will not infringe on the existing homes in the neighborhood. In fact, will help to increase property values. And this is not uncommon across the city. This happens ongoing, where greater density and redevelopment takes place. So this is not uncommon. So simply, I don't want to exhaust this more than we already have. I think a significant effort has already been taken, and I'm supportive of what staff have been able to recommend, and I'm supportive of what the developer has been able to come to the table to compromise with the residents. I will be very supportive of the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Singh. Next up is Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. So, Councillor Yanetsky's amendment to the motion does bring a couple of other moments for me to pause, because I know that this would be something that the community would really, really want, is a reduction of units by 9. You know, I always think it's worth trying, and I think Councillor Yanetsky, with his background, says he's willing to put this forward, and I think there's no harm in trying. So we'll see what happens. I won't be able to comment again. So if this doesn't pass, I commend the community for standing up for their community. We're still seeing infill development that is not, in my opinion, compatible with the existing community. And I think that's the message that has to be sent. When we look at this, when we look at proposals, whether they come in at 100 units and then they get whittled down to 20 to 50, it doesn't matter. It still has to fit with the community, and I think that's what is the crux of the issue here. Is if Mr. Martins and his partners had come in with something that fit with the community, maybe it was 15 units or 20 units that looked like something they've seen across the road, I don't think all of you would be sitting here. Sure, it's a big change, but it wouldn't have been as significant a change. So that's I think the biggest point that we have to make, and this is going to keep happening because there are all kinds of lots out in some of our older developments, and I had exactly the same situation with 689 Dune Village Road. It significantly changed the appearance of the entrance of that development on the street, of the people that live there, and it continues to be a thorn in their side. I hope that's not the case for you guys. Mr. Martins keeps saying that's not going to be the case, but you know what? Let's try and see what happens with this. And if not, I hope all of the concerns that you've raised over the last couple of weeks and with your meetings continue to be resolved in your best interest.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I wasn't planning to speak, but I guess we've been through this situation a few times now, and my patience grows more thin every time. When this came, the time that this happened before, that Councillor Singh alluded to, I did the same thing to the people in the audience, in the gallery, pardon me, that we were affecting, that I'm going to do now. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you that this is playing politics, okay? Council's decision here is not 27 units or 18 units. As a matter of fact, that may as well try and reduce it to 1 unit, because what happens at this point is that the developer will take this to the OMB, okay? And when our staff has already approved it, and make no mistake, as one of the delegations mentioned, would I want this happening down the street from me? No, I would not. But that's not the decision that we're making here. The decision that we're making is a very clear decision in that if we do not approve this now, if we go ahead and approve 18 units as Councillor Yaneski has suggested, what happens is the developer goes to the OMB, and we have our own internal legal staff. 2 of them are here. They're very capable, very bright people. We can't even use them. We have to go to an external firm, hire external lawyers, and it could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight something that we know full well, because we've been to this several times before, is going to come back and be almost exactly the exact 27 units we have here. So some of us are going to look you in the eye and do the responsible thing and say, we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars and go through a process where we know what the end result will be.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovich. This has been a incredibly difficult process for me in particular in trying to balance the needs of the neighborhood that I represent and the rights of the landlord to develop their property. All along, I wanted to make it clear that to residents, and I think I've done that, that the process will not stop the developmental proposal. What we as a community can realistically do is be part of the process and do our best to make the development as much as compatible within the neighborhood. I feel staff did their best job within the Planning Act and the policies of the city and the province have established for growth. We as municipality cannot expect to reduce greenfield development and then not expect to have infill as a consequence. And Mr. Pennell has been very upfront with residents and even went beyond our standards with engaging the public with additional meetings. With that in mind, I just want to just give a synopsis of what has been sort of transpired, and the major issues I heard from residents was the need to have an entrance exit at access on Highland Road. I fully supported that, and I felt that the majority of the neighborhood's concerns would be addressed with that issue being there. But as we know, and after further investigation, that option was ruled out. And even if we do proceed further, as Councillor Davey has mentioned, we're caught in a hard and rock place, whatever that saying is. And the other second major concern I heard from the neighborhood was the size. And again, I made that clear to residents that we need to be realistic with this. And with the landowners drastically reducing their units from 40 to 27 units, I know it's not what the neighborhood wants, and I know but the reality is it is a reduction. It is in their minds, as far as the landowners, they're the ones that they understand their economics, and I think that makes sense to them, and that's why I asked that question to them, whether or not they are going to go to the board or not. And if we were to reduce in one, which is, he made it very clear that he will. And as far as the traffic concerns are, I think, yes, some of it is legitimate. There will be some traffic concerns, but in particular going on to West Heights Drive. And I think those issues will be looked at in further upon review with the redesign of Highland Road, but more in particular, it's already being on the radar with staff in working with the region on that to look at that and realign that because of the changes we did for the bike lane. And so I know this is not what the neighborhood wants to hear and see, but I don't think we're going to get, as Councillor Unesky put out there, to 18 units and get support. And I don't want to give that false impression as well, whether that's going to happen or not. But at the end of the day, I will do what my residents that I represent want to do, and they still want to oppose this, and that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to oppose this, but I just wanted to set the realistic expectations that more likely this won't succeed.
Mr. Wilmer, you wanted to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been some discussion about process if the matter was to go to the OMB, so I want to be clear about this. If council was either to refuse this or reduce the number of units and approve it, it's very likely that the developer would appeal this to the OMB. Because city planning staff have recommended approval of the 27 units, the city would not be able to use its own planning staff. It would have to engage outside planning consultants. It could choose to use its own legal staff. But our practice has been, if it's proposed to be a lengthy hearing, then we would engage outside legal staff.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Whitmer. Mr. Wilmer, sorry. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just had some quick comments. I would always go to bat for residents involved in this kind of dispute. That's where my sympathy usually lies. In this particular case, I'm more than satisfied that we've worked with the developer, we've worked with residents to try and achieve what we can achieve. And so I'm satisfied with that, and that's the way I intend to vote. As far as this recommendation from Councillor Yanetsky is concerned, I don't even think it's worthy of comment. I think the way it has been presented and the visual before us shows the amount of preparation and thought that has gone into it, whether or not he's a former planner. So I'll certainly be voting against this recommendation and voting in favour of the modified proposal, the parts we've been able to accomplish.
Councillor Gazzola.
I came here this evening not intending to speak. I actually talked to the developers during the week and said I had asked if the neighborhood had been involved and they were satisfied and that I could support this. I think a great deal of work has gone into this, and I think that everybody has given. There's been a lot of give and take. But I have to go back to the whole concept, and it's where we're going down the road. As I would not want to see this happen on my street next door to me. And with that in mind, and I'm seeing more and more of it happening, I think I personally have to take a stance and would like to fight this issue. I mean, I've always heard so many times you can't fight City Hall. Now the message is you can't fight the OMB. The OMB says it is, that's the way it is. Well, that's fine. I would still like to have a little fight. Because it's something that's going to affect us many, many more times in this council chamber. And I would like to see if this council really believes in neighborhoods like we're really preaching, that we stand up for our neighborhoods. Yes, yes, there's been a lot done. There's been a lot accomplished here. but still, if there is a chance, I'd like to see us go right to the end and take a chance. And yes, it will cost money, but I've seen the way we've been shoveling out money out of this council chambers in the last couple of months that City of Kitchener will not be going belly up shortly. So I'm prepared to, wasn't my intention when I came here this evening, but I am prepared to support the amendment put forward by Councillor Yanetsky. I'd like a recorded vote when we get to that point.
Okay, no other delegations, or sorry, no other comments at this point, so I'll make my own. Without a doubt, this issue is a difficult one, and I understand both where the neighborhood is coming from on this issue, and I understand where the applicant is coming from on this issue. I also do believe there is a time to fight for neighborhoods and to look at new and better ways to address some of these issues. And that's part of the reason why, as a city, we're in the midst of a process to actually look at developing residential infill guidelines for future applications. I realize that, we're probably a year away before we see that document come to the city, and that doesn't help us in the processing of applications in the meantime. But it is a recognition that it is an important issue, that's something we're going to be dealing with more and more as a result of the intensification mandate that has been set by the province. And so we need to look at that outside of the context of individual applications in order to take, quite frankly, some of the passion that comes out of it and some of the emotion when it's attached to a particular application. So, on this notion of fighting for neighborhoods, I'm all for that, but I think it needs to be done in a way that doesn't mean, we're going to the casino and taking our chances when the odds, quite frankly, aren't very good. I've sat around this horseshoe for many years where we have seen these kinds of situations, and quite frankly, the odds and the experience of going to the OMB are not favorable. If anything, things end up being worse as a result of going to the OMB. And I'll give you one perfect example of it, and it was the apartment building at the corner of Queen and Schneider. And we listened to everybody. We were able to negotiate through the process to get it down. I think it was from 18 stories to 14 stories at the time. There were a number of concessions that were negotiated. And the residents wanted it to go to the OMB. Council supported that. We voted against the recommendation, same set of circumstances. And we ended up going to the OMB. And when these things go to the OMB, the applicant doesn't go in with their 27 typically, which is what we've been negotiated to here. They go back to their starting point, and that's exactly what happened there. And in that particular instance, you know what happened? The 14 floors that we got negotiated down to ended up back at 18 floors. And so I think we need to be realistic and honest with all of you as residents, as much as difficult as that is to also be realistic in terms of what's likely to happen if we go that route. We're in a situation where we've seen the number of units go down from 40 to 27. We see that there's been some goodwill, it appears, established in terms of continuing to work with the neighborhood through the site plan process and so on. And so, based on all of the information before me, I believe that the best alternative for the neighborhood and for the community, weighing everything into account, is to consider the recommendation that's before us. And that's what I will be supporting this evening. So recorded vote has been called. We'll deal with the amendment first. All those in favor of the amendment? Oh, not, sorry. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed to the amendment? The amendment doesn't carry. Now we'll deal with the main motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries. So we now need to move into, I just end by thanking everyone for your participation through the whole process, and for coming in again this evening. I know it's not it may not be the ending that you were all hoping for, but as I said, I think it is, on the balance of probabilities, the one that's going to have the least amount of impact in terms of what could have resulted for the neighborhood going forward. We do need to deal with 3 readings, and there's a late starter bylaw. Madam Clerk? Do I need to click you in? No, I don't.
Yes, Mayor. There's a late starter bylaw dealing with the zone change that we've just dealt with.
Okay. So we're dealing with both the bylaw for the street vendors as well as the late starter one. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Singh. All the late starters for the property that we just approved. You want us to deal with them individually? Okay. We'll deal with the street vendors first. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we'll deal with the one pertaining to this property. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And confirm all actions and proceedings. Moved by Councillor Etherington, second by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gazzola, Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll start planning and strategic initiatives in 2 minutes or thereabouts.